are again.
Yeah.
We got our Mad shirts. We're Mad coaches. David Butterworth, Guy Griever, and getting ready to do another talk about our program and speed training and all things athletic development from Mad, Maximum Athletic Development.
Yeah, we think it's cool that we can do this like almost episodal Mad talk and kind of just share like some of the conversations we have on a regular basis and talk about stuff that might be relevant to what we're doing, what we're trying to do, what we think, why we think this is amazing, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we have these all the time, and it's just a good way to hash out your thoughts. We hear this stuff, we've taken this information, we've been putting some of it into practice. You have with our sports teams now for over a year, and we have this other youth training group that we started that's, again, going well, and just a place to sort of talk about what we're seeing, what we're thinking, how our thoughts are evolving, and record it, and so people can get a more of a sense of what we're doing, what we are as we start this thing. So.
Love it. Let's get going.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you one of the topics that I really wanted to talk about that I think is super important, that I've seen you talk about, I've listened to you talk about, but even I could use some more of your perspective on, is this idea. I've seen you draw this pyramid of the importance of, for the athlete, the training piece, where does it fit in? The rest piece, the nutrition piece. And I think that's really important for people to understand, that when we're looking at this whole picture, I think that maybe people, because we're so into it, would think that our answer to what's most important for our athletes would be, well, speed training, because that's what we're doing, that's what we're into. But that's really not what's at the base. So could you just kind of recreate that and talk a little bit about how you see it?
Yeah, I think it's a cool way to represent a framework for moving forward. Like, what are we actually going to put into practice? If we have like this framework or this map, I think it directs our practices day to day, to a certain extent. And a lot of this stuff, like, based on 43 years of being alive, and 20 years of doing this with people, and before that, like my whole life of doing this with, in my own head and in my own practices. Like, I've been doing this a long time and like loving it. It's been a passion. And so we accumulate all this stuff. We listen to people talk about stuff, and based on our intuition, based on our own experiences, we kind of weed out a lot of stuff, and then some stuff sticks, and we develop this picture of how we want to do things. And this pyramid is, like, to me, a great way to look at where we want to put our time and what we want our foundation of practices to be built on. And so I think a lot of people would assume that the bottom floor is training, and we want to train, we want to do this and that and whatever. And it's like, that's great. It has to be there, I think, in my mind. But if that's not resting on top of first this floor of this, I probably would draw it in a real rough sense. Sometimes I might be more refined with it, but it's got to be resting on a foundation of rest, recovery, sleep, which we can lump kind of together, nutrition, and I would say psychology. And the psychological piece, the psychology piece is like, if we're not feeling good, if our self-esteem isn't, in a good place, if we're not thinking positive thoughts, if we're not rebounding from failures, seeing failures as actually successes, and that's where we kind of learn the most, and building everything on this like positive, I call it PMA, positive mental attitude, but I think that's huge. And then if we're not soundly filling our body with good nutrition, sleeping, recovery, I call championship sleep, 8 to 10 hours of sleep. We can't, none of this makes a difference at all. And this is our, sprint. We talked about this a little bit in the first episode. Sprint, jump high, jump far, and lift. We'll throw bounce in there too.
Bounce.
Get
bouncy.
We want to be snappy. We want to be bouncy. We want to be whippy.
Yeah.
We want to be twitchy. We want to be all these things that I think most people have been around sports a long time. They recognize that good athletes have bounce.
Yes.
So there's a number of ways that manifests in our training. But we can do this all day. till we're blue in the face our whole life. But if it's not resting on this, we aren't going to get any adaptations, or at least we're not going to get the ideal adaptations that I think we're looking for. So I think, I look at it like that.
I recognize too that the psychology piece, everyone, isn't it funny how we say how important this stuff is and how reluctant we are to do it? Because we can operate okay without having this be at its ideal. And yet, with this foundation you've built, it's like, well, just operating there, just existing there, we're not really maximizing, right? That's kind of what we're saying. You're saying this piece is so important to the foundation. The psychology too, wanting to be there, being in that good headspace.
Yeah, we talk about all the time, like the way you enter the room or enter the training or enter this sphere of what we're doing, like it means a ton. It means a ton for your own energy and what you're going to put to it. It means a ton with the group energy. We talk about energy vampires. Like, don't be an energy vampire, because there's nothing that'll kind of rip at the seams of what we're trying to grow here quicker than like having a negative attitude. Like it hurts yourself, but it hurts the team. It's perspective. My dad used to say all the time, he never lost a match. I love this sentiment. And I was always like, oh, you're ridiculous. Like, I know you lost. He played tennis. That was his big thing. He played some pro tennis in Europe and played tennis and coached tennis a long time in his life. And so he'd like be like, I never lost a match. I'm like, that's ridiculous. And his point was, and he explained this later to me one time, is that when he'd go to bed at night, he'd replay the match in his head, and he'd replay all his unforced errors and all his lost points to being where he won those points, and he didn't make those errors, and he made these great shots. And so he'd replay the whole match in his head, and then he said when he'd wake up the next morning, he realized he felt like a winner. He felt confident because he redid all these things and made all these adjustments in his head. And I think that expresses the power of visualization. I think when we're talking about psychology too, we can in some ways manifest some of this really awesome stuff. And then at the top of this is games, right? So we can even manifest, seeing ourselves do really great things in games. And to our brain, there's no difference between that happening in reality and that happening through a visualization practice. Bloomfield, a coach who I played junior college baseball for many years ago, in a lot of ways was a mentor for me. And he used to talk about all the time, like with hitting, like if you're taking good reps in your mind, like that's the same as actually doing it in real life. So you can get thousands of and I think Olympic athletes forever have known this, like, gymnasts and, swimmers, and, they're getting really good at the visualization piece. And so to me, manifesting isn't just visualizing it, but it's like attaching this feeling, this emotive response as you're visualizing, like how it's going to feel when you perform like that.
Right. And I getting used to that.
Yeah. And I think in some ways we're just unraveling this window or this path to everything we want when we do it like that. So these are things that come up in conversations and little things that we can throw into the beginning of our training sessions where people can start to think a little bit different and have this perspective. So all of this together is completely, to me, the foundation of this.
And you've done so many trainings with groups, adult populations or high school populations, youth populations. I just want to revisit something you said about energy and sort of how I feel about it. I think that they were on the same page with this, that isn't it funny, the energy piece, how you talk about don't be an energy vampire, an energy taker, be an energy giver. And it's so powerful both ways. How you can, a couple of individuals who have good energy can pick up and lift the rest of the group so far, and they can also take it down so far. Like, it just works both ways. It's not just like, hey, yeah, exactly. It's passed along either way, right? You're either just this ball of energy is coming in, it's giving everybody this positive feeling, or it's kind of going the other way and sort of, energy vampires sucking some of the life out of everyone else's practice. And I just think that you've probably seen a lot of that with even a few individuals, like lifting the spirit of the whole group, and that's why it's so important to you to even mention it.
And that's why conversations and building relationships are so important, because you can start to see stuff materializing in positive and negative ways, and you can start to channel some of your energy, speaking of energy, to those relationships. that might amend some of, like, if it's a negative, thing that's transpiring, you can try to nip it in the bud, get that person to open just a little bit of a different perspective, and now they're coming in with a different energy.
Right. Through their training, because we all know in a game, like, it's the importance of teammates, high five, this and that.
Yeah.
But in our trainings, how many times we said, hey, stop and give someone a high five. Hey, stop and tell someone, like, this is gonna be a great rep for you. And just to hear that from people, I know just my own person, it's like, that's awesome. I see you pick people up, the whole groups all the time. Some energy.
Well, it's the day to day. Like, we can want to have great energy in a game, but it's that thing. You are what you practice. You repeatedly do that Aristotle line. It's like, if you don't practice having that good energy, even on days when you might not be feeling it, or like, and it's very easy. Like, you might not be feeling it, but if the group energy is pretty good, you get sucked into it.
Yeah.
And if you get sucked into it every single day, then having good energy and being a good teammate in a game, that's a no-brainer. It just happens.
It's just how you operate.
But you can't turn that switch on if you haven't practiced it. I joke with guys all the time. Like, I think, when I'm talking about something, I like to give rationale for everything we're doing. Like, and just get inside my brain. It might be a 1 minute or a 30-second, speech to the team, or like a sell. Like, this is why we're doing this.
Yep.
And I joke all the time that these guys probably don't understand a word I'm saying sometimes, and that's partly because I'm not articulating it super clearly, but it might also be because what they're really getting is the energy of what I'm saying. So I joke all the time, like, we don't talk in words and concepts. We talk in energy.
Yes,
and that's what we get from each other. So
and
I think
develop those relationships that they're like they have a feeling. I know, I've seen it. They trust you, and so since they trust you, if they can tell you're excited about something, just by that trusting nature, you talk about relationship you have built, you spent time fostering, and they know you're on their side. They're like, this guy, he's talking about something that he saw. I have no idea the science piece or whatever it is, but I trust him, and he thinks it's really good for me. Therefore, like, I believe it's good for me, and I'm excited about it also. I think that's the energy piece you're talking about. And the rationale piece is important too.
Yeah, that's super cool. Well, there's no doubt about it. We're in this together. We're on the ship together. And I think the language, this goes into this too, the language we use really matters. Like, it's not me and I and mine and all those types of words. It's we, it's us, it's our. We're in this together. And I think you can't really fake that either. I think it's got to be a genuine feeling. But look, we're all trying to do something better and have a good life and get better and win games, and have fun. And I think this all tends to be a part of it. I think at this level, we want to keep talking about the pyramid.
Definitely.
I'd just say it's skill practice, and this is like what you mentioned in that first talk. It's shooting your shots. It's getting your dribbles in. It's your thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of practicing your skill. And I think and this is why we're doing MAD, Maximum Athletic Development. Just because we both strongly feel that this precedes this. In other words, you can be really good at some skills, but if there's a huge gap in the athleticism, in terms of how powerful you are, or how high you can jump, or how fast you can run, which is those are examples of power. Right. You're gonna get left behind.
Sometimes you don't get the opportunity to even show this
if
you can't take care of this piece first.
Yeah.
Right? In many ways, you don't get the opportunity.
We've seen tons of examples of that in our life, coaching and speed and strength coaching.
Yeah.
And then here it's, I'd say, strategy, and I think this one here is big, and right now I'd put it on both levels, and it's performing in practice. And that means we're gamifying practice. We're giving opportunities for the kids to compete, and I think we learn a ton through competition. This is why we promote or we support people play as many sports as possible, because I would argue that if you're growing up and you're playing a ton of basketball, you're gonna be a better football player. If you're playing football, and then right around the corner is baseball season, you're gonna be a better baseball player. You've been in more creative situations where you can learn how to figure out those situations to your advantage and win. You learn how to compete. And that general ability will make you better in every sport.
Yeah, we've mentioned this together so many times before, how the body awareness piece by being put into those different sports where a lot of the positions and leverages are you need, but you have to find different ways to do them by the nature of the game and by the nature of that skill practice. Hey, you learn this little bit, whether you're not consciously thinking about it. Your body's just learning. It's just your, we're both big. The book, The Inner Game of Tennis,
Amazing.
Self 1, Self 2. The Self 2 is unthinking, and it's what needs to be trusted. But Self 1 is what we're doing when we're, consciously making an effort to work on this certain thing. But once we get into the game and it's time to perform, you don't want to be thinking. You don't want the mind to be controlled. It's too slow.
It's too slow.
You got to trust the Self 2. And by putting yourself in all those different types of situations, just like you said, you play basketball, it's going to make you better on the football field. You play football, you wrestle, you learn something about body leverage and positioning that could help you in football, in lacrosse, and whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's so, so important for those kids. And then, we also, it's the real world. If you have some major opportunity in one sport, which by the way, you won't really know until you're older anyways, then okay. If you have an opportunity to save yourself a couple $100,000 by getting a college scholarship, okay. You specialize so you don't destroy on accident your body, and the college coach told you like, hey, you can't do this if you ruin it.
At that point.
Right.
But that happens for how many people? Just a few, right?
Yeah.
Like, and very few people are going to move on to the next level, and that's just a fact. And very few people are going to move on beyond that. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It doesn't mean we're not trying to increase our chances of that happening. But why don't we just have fun?
Yeah.
And playing sports is fun.
I hear it.
Yeah.
Don't forget that piece. We lose that piece.
Well, I think we play better when we're having fun. I mean, to the ultimate, the highest level, it seems to be evident. Look at Tyrese Halliburton. That guy's having fun playing basketball. He said it after the game. He said, 5 game tying or game winning shots in the last 5 seconds in this year's playoffs alone? That ties him for the record all time, I think.
It's really insane. And you're right. He is having fun. He's enjoying it. And that doesn't mean, there are moments of frustration, but the psychology piece is so big. We all coaches know how many times we tell our players, like, well, you got to move on to the next play. You got to turn the page.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to do. It's really difficult to do.
Yeah.
We all know that we'll be better if we're not stewing on and dwelling on the thing that just happened and not running back. It's hard, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to put into practice.
I call that confident, the confidence piece. I think coming from the Latin roots with, and fidens coming from the Latin roots trust, like you trusting that self too, that alligator brain, like when we're in that prefrontal cortex. And this is science too, we're not just saying this. Like, there's a lot of science to support when we're highly active in the prefrontal cortex, like our behaviors, our actions, our physical, motor skills and stuff are slow. Yeah. And so I think getting into that state, that confidence is it can be either built on a lot of successes in your life, and you can just go back in your life and basically make up successes to start being confident. Because heck, I made the bed this morning. I don't usually make the bed, but I made the bed this morning.
Well done, sir.
I can go from that being like, I made the bed. Now I'm feeling a little bit like I'm building these blocks of confidence.
Yeah.
We can look for stuff all over our life to do that.
Absolutely.
Or you can be, and I like to say that the second way to be confident is just to be psychotic confident. like this psychotic confidence. Like, you don't need any reason to be confident. We have a lot of examples in our world of people like this. Sometimes it's unfounded. Sometimes it's perfectly okay and natural. But the point is that by adopting some of these attitudes of confidence, like, we're able to bypass the ego and get into that alligator brain or that self to, the terminology from that book, Inner Tennis, into that state where we're just kind of trusting, things to happen. Yeah. And good things happen. I mean, when Tyrese Halliburton was interviewed right after that game last night, he coming back to the fun piece, he's just like, basketball's fun, isn't it? Like, that was basically his first response. I'm like, oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a way to think about it positively. I think one of the things I'm saying repeatedly, it's so simple to young athletes all the time, and my own kids, and not just for sports, for anything. It's like, attitude controls experience. Yeah. How true is that? If you go into something positively, because you can whatever, right? There's another way to say it. Whatever you're looking for, you're gonna find it. Yeah, right? If you're going in with a bad attitude, like, oh, this is probably not gonna be. odds are, yeah, it's not going to be a good experience. There's going to be good and bad defined in all that. But if you go into something, even a chore, I remember doing this as a kid, like trying to fool myself, like, well, maybe digging this trench to bury this water line for Dad is like, maybe I'm going to find something cool in the ground.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think I found
You
some
make
cool
a game
stuff.
of it.
I never
You
found
made
a
a-
fossil or anything, but
You opened yourself up to
Yes.
this like explorative, curiosity-driven, thing.
Yes, it was just self-talking my way into a better experience.
Yeah.
And that happens in sports and practice. And
Oh
stuff,
yeah.
so.
What's that widely attributed quote where it's like we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's largely true. And so that opens us up to our best sessions every single day. We say a lot. Today is the day.
Yeah.
We had a guy over here from Sweden last year,
Yes.
and I'm probably gonna butcher this, but I said, how do you say today is the day in Swedish? And he's like, and again, I might butcher this, but we say it all the time now. Guys will yell it out of nowhere. You dogging a dogging.
Yeah.
And guys will yell it because this guy was awesome. Milton. Remember Milton?
Yes.
And so, talking about that energy piece, like he came over here as an exchange student, and he left a mark.
Yeah.
And people loved having him around. He had terrific energy, and it's still there.
Yeah.
So that energy he brought with him is that contagious energy he brought. It didn't go anywhere, and it's still going, and it's getting bigger and better every day. Like, it's pretty cool.
So today's the day. Yeah, thanks. I like that. The pyramid is up, and
Yeah, it's pretty rough, but I threw it up there, just top of mind when you asked that, and and we can get into a lot of details on each one of those items for sure.
yeah,
But this guides our practices. It really does,
yeah, it does.
in a general sense.
It does. We gotta have some. We like to be spontaneous in our stuff, but having some sort of a base idea. And I think that people being able to hear and understand that.
Yeah, well, directly related to Mad and Mad Speed, and getmadspeed.com. That's our website. And it's all around that theme. It's like this. You're not gonna find much stuff in here where it's like stuff that'll make you slow. Like we're not doing stuff that makes you slow.
No, yeah, I don't see.
And I think that's the main tenet of what we're doing, right? Like,
yeah. There's no. We talked about it before. The endurance piece, we're more and more finding. Unless you're an specific endurance athlete, which you could still.
There's a time and a
benefit
place.
from stuff. Right.
There's a time and a place, and we had great success last year with football. We trained speed all year in the off season, all year, and it was our priority. Which we talked about in the first episode. Like priority doesn't mean majority; it's our priority, and we centered our weeks around trying to develop speed. And we got faster. We have good data to prove that in the last 5 years. It's actually really cool.
Yep.
But 2 weeks before the season started, we did a bunch of lactate work. And for me, that's this, last year it was this drill we called 16-second drill. And you run as fast as you can for 16 seconds. You go end line to end line, and most guys, almost every single guy, right, will get to the 100-yard mark and then transition and turn around. You're just running, you see how far you can get in 16 seconds. And you rest like 6 or 7 or 8 minutes, and you do it again. And I think the very first session we did of that, we did one, because it's hard. We had guys throwing up and like being sick after that. Like it's really hard. You build up this lactic acid in your muscles, and it's different. My point is, we did that for a couple sessions that first week. We did that for a couple sessions that second week, right before the season started, right before we got into practices. And we had like our trainer who's been here forever, Jamie. He was like, I've never seen these guys as in shape. Well, what did we do? All year we prepared these guys to be ready for the ultimate output action, right? The highest level of neural output. The most extreme thing you can do, sprint. We speed train.
Yep.
And then a couple weeks before the season, we did a little bit of this lactate work, and we were in fantastic shape.
Yeah. Without so much impact.
We devoted like a little bit of time right before the season.
Right.
And then we let practice and games of actual football, specific work get us in shape.
Yeah.
And I thought we started the season in great shape.
No, that's a good point. Just to say that we trained mostly for the performance that we needed.
Yeah.
And then we did a little bit of work, and then we let the games take care of it.
We let the games take care of it.
That's the ultimate training method, right? We say a lot of time in our sessions, like the training is the test is the training.
Yeah.
Well, the test of the games when kids are all amped up and the game is on and the competitive nature is at its best. That's really, you can't fully simulate that environment, and so they need that. We said it in the first episode a little bit, but I just want to retouch on it. That no matter what you do beforehand, every coach who's coached sea level knows that your team will not be in game shape until they have played a few games.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter the old training, we're running miles before, and what we think of as just grinding these people into like this state of not being rested, recovered.
Yeah.
And there's still, you did all that and you spent so much time, because that takes hours.
Yeah.
And they're not really in game shape until 2 or 3, depending on the sport, games in.
Yeah.
And we do this, right? We sprint, and then you do a little bit of that lactic work, and they're not really in game shape though till your second or third week of the season. It's just how it goes.
Yeah. Well, it's the director of sports performance at Texas Christian University. I can't remember his name right now, but he was talking about this. I was listening to him, and he was talking about the shiny new toy effect. So not only do we think, oh, we're gonna just pile this conditioning on these guys. We're gonna do 2-a-days. You know, the old football 2-a-days. You know, we start the season and we're gonna do 2-a-days for a week. Well, not only are guys maybe gonna get hurt in that situation, but like you said, it probably works against us in terms of even getting conditioned. But he calls it the shiny new toy effect. It's like when a kid gets something for Christmas, right? What do? They play massively with it for a couple hours or maybe a couple days, and a lot of those toys, what happens after that? They just sit around,
dusty,
right? So as coaches, and I like the way he talked about this. Like, we get all excited because we haven't seen these guys for a while, and we want to do everything, not just from a conditioning standpoint, but from a skill standpoint, from a strategy standpoint. We're just piling this stuff on these guys right away. How much of that is actually getting retained or is useful for what we're trying to do during the season? And so I think that shiny new toy effect is a good way to think of it. Like, we got to be careful not to do that.
Wearing them out.
Yeah, we got to be careful not to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And if you, the example, I don't remember who was talking about it, but it was Brian Kula, McCaffrey's trainer.
Yeah.
And McCaffrey's a phenomenal athlete. So you could, this is just an anecdote, right?
Yeah.
So you could make the argument, well, he's just a great athlete. It's like, well, there are a lot of great athletes up there on these teams, and guys who...
They're all freaks.
Yes, all freaks.
To some degree. Meaning, they're really athletic.
Really fast. Really, talk about balance and lift and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But he never trained for that endurance stuff.
Performance.
Performance only.
1 to 6 seconds of creatine phosphate energy system with like highest output level work, speed,
right,
and explosiveness, and lots of rest in between sets.
Yes,
all year.
And then, but who was it? I can't remember who it was. You might know which of the guys it was that I was listening on this pod. And they asked Kula, hey, but was there ever a time when that bit him in the butt, at a condition? Do you remember who it was that asked him that?
I don't remember.
And the story was,
Holler. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe so. That he was asked, but did that ever, because not all teams necessarily believe the same way. So they put these athletes through these conditioning tests at the beginning of OTAs or camp or whatever. Did that ever bite him in the butt? And he said, well, one time at Panthers camp, he showed up and the test was you got to run 1600s and total time. We're going to say total time. And
like 30 seconds rest.
Yeah, 30 seconds rest, not full recovery. And so you would think this guy's used to running these max efforts and resting for 5 minutes. He's going to be screwed by whoever's been doing these continual stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, what happened? Oh, he won. So he beat everybody in these timed events, right?
Both of his first 2 years with the Panthers.
Endurance athletes, and more endurance style with that short rest. And all he had been training was nothing like that. And other guys had been training like that, and he beat them all.
Yeah.
Because his body was prepared, and that level of training at maximal output, it does prepare you for that.
Yeah.
Right? It does prepare you for, and maybe this is a good time for you to jump in. There's something going on besides with the power and the explosiveness. Explosiveness, great word, by the way. Everybody uses it a lot, but really, really explosiveness in this mad style sprint training. What's going on there that can help these athletes in areas that aren't directly tied? You go, oh yeah, you do sprint training. Of course that helps track sprinter. Of course that helps the kid on the football field who breaks off one long run. But maybe you want to talk about this central nervous component that, well, it's helpful to your golfer who's swinging through. It's helpful to your whatever sport,
Yeah.
across all sports. The tide that raises all athletic ships.
Pretty crazy.
I'd like to say.
Well, we love it. We got it from Tony Holler.
Yeah.
We're going to use it a lot. It's the most extreme thing you can do.
By the way, let me jump in. Check out the Tony Holler talk with Dave. Tony Holler is one that we consider like the one of the old wise sages of this stuff.
Yeah.
He's been doing it a long time. What he says just makes a lot of sense to us, and he has results in years of data and anecdotes to back it up. So check out, Dave has an interview with him. That's really cool.
Been coaching track successfully in Chicago for at a Chicago high school for over 40 years. Just retired recently, actually. A legend. He's gonna keep doing what he's doing. His feed the cats is his thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned Kula. We're talking about this extreme behavior. Learning how to when we're fresh, recovered, happy, and healthy, we're gonna sprint. We're gonna sprint as often as possible, as fresh as possible. And because we're getting those regular outputs frequently enough over a consistent period of time, and it's the highest level of thing you can do from a central nervous system output perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We're really training our CNS. We're really training our central nervous system, and what that means. And Brian Kula, who we've been talking about back and forth here with Christian McCaffrey, he coaches a bunch of people through his sports performance outfit, and he's finding that he'll take like a group of swimmers. Like he took a group of high-level Division I athlete college swimmers, and this is like considered blasphemy.
Right.
Almost like trained them on the field,
Right.
to get faster.
Yeah, and they're not doing any of that
No,
impact
no.
stuff in the pool.
No, so it's like as untransferable you would think as you could get, right? These are swimmers. They live in the pool. Why are we training them to get faster in a linear sense? Well, he improved all these swimmers improved their miles per hour top speed over the course of 6 to 12 weeks of training. They went in the pool. Now they're breaking records. They're breaking their personal best. They're getting swim records because they've gotten faster. They've learned how to push the ceiling of what their central nervous system is capable of, and now they can use that in other facets. They use more of their muscle, more of their it's like the motor neurons, right? They have more that they can deliver to any task because they've gotten better at doing the most extreme task there is. He showed with golfer. He's got a golfer he's working with, a pro golfer, who increased their swing speed by 15 miles per hour after 6 weeks of sprint training.
And
getting
sprint
faster.
training is really tied to, like, no, you wouldn't think, right? Intuitively, you'd be like, well, those are completely separate motions. But like you said, it's the neural component.
Yeah, so now I can hit the ball farther. I mean, I don't know if this is true or not. Shohei Ohtani's always been hitting bombs. Like he was born a baseball player, as far as I can tell from some of the stories. As close to a prodigy or that type of thing as you can come in sport, I think. But I love this story, and I don't know how the veracity of it, but I heard an announcer talking about it, and I'm just going to take it.
Yeah.
When he was with the Angels and he was looking to sign with the Dodgers, and by the way, he's signed the biggest contract in the history of sport.
It's a lot of money.
So he's he's pretty good at playing baseball in a lot of ways. But a big thing to him was he wanted to get faster, so he could steal more bases. And it was a big thing for him. Like it was a big focus of his. So when he was looking to sign with the Dodgers, he wanted to know with the before he signed, who's going to work. Who do you have who's going to help me develop my speed and get faster? And he had to have that in place, and he felt assured that there was someone who could help him. And what did he do the next year? He went 50-50 as the first player in history to ever do that. 50 home runs in a season or more, and 50 stolen bases or more in the same season. I think that's a great story. And he hits the ball a mile.
Yes.
So getting faster probably didn't hurt him in that respect either.
No, certainly not. Certainly not for the stolen bases, but the effect it could have on everything else. And you're talking about people. I mean, the collegiate swimmers, the people who Kula's working with they're already in the very upper echelon.
A lot of them. Yep.
Right? They're phenomenal athletes already, and they've been training pretty much their entire lives to help get to that level. It's so competitive, and yet they add this piece, and their performance jumps, right?
Yeah.
A little bit jumps in some way that they weren't getting just from the traditional training. They're struggling through it, and they add just this sprinting piece. It seems unrelated almost, and hey, it's just a boost. Just getting used, the central nervous system getting used to operating at that red line in many, many different ways. And we think, well, what we know is that the highest red line you can get sprints is running as fast as you can because of the forces and whatever, the physics involved and the way humans are developed, the way the earth and gravity and all that stuff works. That is the uplifter of everything.
Yeah. Well, so you talk about the pro guys, you talk about the young people, the young humans, who we're going to be working with. And it's like if you're a young human and you either don't have practice at exhibiting this type of high output behavior, or you just don't have the knowledge of like how you might be able to do it mechanically, and through some drills we learn how to do some things that kind of like make this happen more regularly for you. Those increases, those gains, those increases in speed, those drops in speed times, they're going to be pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
And what a difference that's going to maybe make to your life.
Yes.
Change your whole world.
Yes.
But a great story of the elite guy, going back to the elite guys, is the Chris Korfist and David Montgomery story.
Yes.
I think that's an amazing story. David Montgomery was a really good, really strong, plenty strong enough. Got drafted, went to the Bears, and he came from Illinois State, I think. And he was doing okay. I think he was doing okay, but in the NFL. But I think the knock on him was like, man, this guy's he's not exploding out.
Yeah. Breakdown film by tenths of a second.
He's not fast enough. Well, he ends up getting hooked up with this guy named Chris Korfist, who's another track coach.
Who's another that we believe is like, oh yeah, like these guys are the guys who are writing the old book that we're like just sorting through and trying to get this stuff from Korfist.
Yeah, and there's lots of people out there. I think that's one of our biggest jobs as professionals in any profession, is to be really good at discerning. Because there's so much out there.
So much
right?
content now.
And we have to, and I think this is how we grow as a world of this, what we're doing is this world of speed development, this world of training, this world of anything we're interested in. It grows by standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
Like we'd be idiots if we weren't trying to decipher what's good, what's bad, and who kind of has a beat on this, and then be able to test it out. That William Blake line, like experimentation is the true method of knowledge.
Yeah.
So we have to then see if it, because contexts matter.
Yeah, you're making it your own in some way.
And if we're working with this group and that certainly isn't working, we have to be have enough bravery to look ourselves in the mirror and be like, this isn't working.
Yeah.
We got to try something different. So we're constantly sorting through all that stuff and trying to be better and trying to be better. And
self-examination.
Again, I think we have some good data to know at least that we're not making people slower. And in fact, the opposite, we're finding a lot of data of these huge improvements with the people we're working with. And that's all great and everything. But back to the David Montgomery thing, it's like this guy went and found Korfist through a teammate of his who was a high school track guy with Korfist. And so through mutual, friends, they met up. He spent like 6 or 8 weeks with him or something, and they did some things, and Korfist helped him out. And he came back running 1.5 miles per hour faster.
Which is
with already a guy who's a running back in the NFL. And now look at the guy.
Yeah,
he's one of the best running backs in the NFL.
Yeah,
and he splits time with the guy from Alabama, and they play for Detroit. Yeah, with the Lions now.
Yeah,
and their feature backfield, those two are amazing, and like I think it's just a great story. Like
it is.
He's already pretty damn good.
Yeah,
but now he got faster, and
exactly.
and God, what an impact!
What an impact! What an impact for a guy who's already training at the highest level for years.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And adding that piece, finding something a little bit. It's changed his whole career.
Yeah.
His whole career trajectory.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll get into that more later.
Let me ask you this, because I want to kind of just switch gears back to this. This was on my mind. You've lived your whole life. You've been involved in sport. You've been in an active lifestyle. Like I got all kinds of stories from people who know you, who have told me stories about how much they worship you and your athletic.
All good stuff, I'm sure. Oh gosh.
And your physical prowess and just all the things. What has transpired historically and then more recently to make this, like what we're doing with maximum athletic development, a must? like we have to do this. Like tell me more about this.
Yeah, I think that it's just like anybody who's gone through sports. Mostly, we've all trained, we practice together. As a coach, I've had many groups of kids come through, and we're always adjusting training. There's always this sense, right? And you can probably, I'm sure, relate to this. Like, there are certain guys, I think, that they maybe didn't work as hard in the weight room as us, or they're not your hardest working kid if you're coaching in the weight room. And when it's time to perform, they just run faster than everybody else and jump higher and
the cats.
Exactly. And you're like, well, maybe it's just genetics. You know, we always go back, but it's not just genetics. There's also this, and this is what I've seen develop. Like, wondering why. Like, I have the same body type as this guy, or you see two people, they have the same body type. This one works so hard in the weight room. I mean, look at the size of their legs. And they're working hard. They lift twice as much as this guy because this guy never lifts. And yet, this guy's just way bouncier, way faster.
Yeah.
You can measure it, or after you've been around sports long, you can just see it watching these guys run around.
Yeah.
And so that piece has always been in my head, wondering. And as we go through, you know, it's like we believe in weight training, and that was always the major focus of training for explosiveness was weights. And I did it, and I had tried a bunch of different stuff. I've put myself through Air Alert, which is this plyometric program.
Yeah.
Air Raid is another one. Strength shoes and all this stuff. And I'm like,
that.
what is going on here? And until we really started getting into it, you're training and listening to these guys, Corfus, Kula, Ken Clark, Tony Holler, and you start to hear what they're saying. And then it answers that piece of like, where did this guy come from? Who these guys are all strong, and how is this guy then? You talk about Montgomery, he's strong enough. I mean, that guy's a freak. And these guys are somehow strong enough because what we've always been taught is like, well, yeah, muscle hypertrophy increases power. You get your power out from the muscles. And I think what I've heard, what I've seen people make this, you talk about making this a must. Like, why am I putting my own kids through this?
Yeah.
Is one of the things, and we can get into it more later. That's the bell, which is kind of a good marker for us to get to our other stuff. Is like, but what carries that power? What transfers that power? And I've heard these guys talk about, the ligaments are the system that actually connects all the skeletal pieces together. And not only that, but the ligaments have this massive elastic power that gets tapped into by certain people who, trained or otherwise, have just learned to tap into that.
Yeah.
Right? Oftentimes we tell the kids about using their body as a trampoline. Like, you can generate some power on your own with your muscles, right? Your muscular power. But what accentuates and magnifies that power? Because even if you don't have that much muscular power, if you know how to use that trampoline, boy, it's like timing up a double bounce on a trampoline.
Yeah.
Like, I only have a little bit of this power drink, but if I can time that up and learn to use this elasticity, there's so many forces, so much explosive power involved in that. And so my experience, like going back to why this is a must, is it's like, if we talk about it a little more, that's what's tied this whole thing together with, for me, in my own mind, my experiences of why there's these guys who are skinny and they don't have these massive muscles, and so where are they generating this power from? How is this guy's jumping over my head, and I can squat twice as much as him. I can clean way more than him. What's going on here? Why am I not getting these? And why do we see that from people? And it's this other type of system that they've tapped into that and some people never have as much practice tapping into, and that's what we're trying to access, and that's why I think it's so important, and it's a must for athletes. And we can get into that a little bit more later.
Well, it's great. I want to table some of that stuff. And what came to my mind was like all these things, like what we're learning, like actually makes someone fast, and it's not just the magnitude of force that you're applying vertically down into the ground, but it's like the rate.
Yes.
And so your force, your ability to create force relative to your body weight. Like I say all the time, like fat. You know, and I'm getting bigger as I get older and slower because fat doesn't fly. It just doesn't. So that's a factor too. So we talk about these skinny guys, these guys who have low body fat, who whatever, and they move really well, but they have a lot of force they can generate fast, and relative to their body weight, that's a pretty big, right? And so we're not talking like no matter who you are, whether you're someone who naturally has some of these things, and
Mm-hmm.
these are things I want to table because these are all good
Right.
topics for the next time we talk, to really get into the weeds on this.
Yes.
But like, if you're really fast, you're just fast. You've always been fast. That doesn't mean you've gotten to your ceiling.
Correct.
And if you're really slow compared to the guy who's really fast, you might be at your ceiling, but you probably aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're trying to do is find ways through coaching, through guidance, through support, through drills, through giving ourselves a chance to get this max effort expression regularly when we're fresh and rested, to get closer to our ceiling.
At least
and
have
what
the
we're finding
opportunity.
is like even the guys who I meet for the first time, they're really quote unquote fast compared to other guys. They're all getting faster too.
Yeah, they're also
So-
getting faster.
So we don't know where that is, and you don't know where that is as an individual unless you explore it.
Yes, we feel like this is the opportunity. This creates the opportunity to explore what the limit is.
Yeah.
Because we're
Yeah.
working at the limit. And otherwise, we're almost just. And you may be traveling very fast, but for you, that's a cruise. It could be considered a cruise if you're not up there at that ceiling, pushing the edge, finding the edge, falling down on some reps.
Yeah.
Because you searched for the edge and you found it right then.
Yeah.
And hey, you get back up and you rest and then you do your other rep.
Yeah.
And you push the limit again.
And it could be something as simple, also as like you have the ability to produce a lot of force fast, but for some reason your brain realizes that your feet aren't strong enough to handle it.
Yeah.
And so the brain in a lot of ways acts as a central governor. If it realizes your foot ankle complex isn't strong enough to be stiff with that collision, because it's really a collision, sprinting is a collision.
Yep.
It's the highest forces of anything we can do, and that minimal ground contact time. It's all related. You're colliding with the ground, and if your brain realizes your foot isn't strong enough to handle that collision, it won't let you produce the force that you have to produce.
It's gonna shut you down.
So it could be as simple as like we got to get stronger feet.
Yes.
You
That's
know,
often the weak link.
From the everything happens from the ground up.
It's the base.
So these are all things like I think would be great, and this is going to naturally happen. I think we talk and we do this all the time, but like we're going to table all these things and keep having mad talk.
There could be many episodes of Mad Talk.
Well, I think that's the point, is to let people kind of get in our brain, in our world, and just share kind of like why we're doing this, what we're doing, why we think it makes a huge difference, and in fact it could be the biggest difference making in our lives.
Yeah.
And just how fun this is.
Yeah, definitely. So great.
Awesome.
Cool shirt.
Yep.
Nice logo.